think it's important to note that Move to Amend is not the only organization that's advocating for this Occupy the Courts effort around the country.
I don't know if you know who I am. I pronounce my name strangely. It's Norman Goldman. It's easy to spell, kind of rhymes, it's very dopey. But when you're in this courthouse, which I have been in, and you're in all these other courthouses, which I have been in, the court reporters really appreciate it when you state your appearance to the bench. You say, Norman Goldman, and the court reporters go, oh, that's easy. And you can find my website, normangoldman.com, and that'll tell you all about me and who I am. I'm definitely part of the 99% like you. The Constitution, of which I call them the Republican Party because they call us the Democrat Party. They intentionally mispronounce the name of my party. So I figure, well, you know, two can play that game. So I call them the Republicans, changing the A to an O. And it conjugates beautifully. You can contract it. It's apostrophe C-O-N because the guys at the top are the con artists and the sheep at the bottom are the conned, C-O-N-N-E-D, because they're imbeciles. All you got to do is wave the flag, say Jesus, and their brains freeze up. They go, oh my God, he said the magic word Jesus. I must obey everything he says. And that's your Republican Party. Wall Street and a bunch of religious imbeciles. That's who they are. I'm sorry, but that's the Republican Party. They love saying, read the Constitution, obey the Constitution. Well, if you actually were to go and look at the Constitution, you would find a thing called Article 3. Article 3 is very short. You can read it in less than 1 minute, probably about 30 seconds. It's really short. It essentially says there's a Supreme Court, Congress will take care of the rest of it, have a nice day, we're moving along. But they did put one thing right in the middle of the very short Article 3 that is crucial to this issue. They said the Supreme Court shall hear only cases and controversies. What that means, and the way it's been interpreted through the years, is that the courts are very passive. The courts are intended to be very passive. So you don't have a group of judges waking up one morning, having a cup of coffee, saying, you know, we'd really like to decide whether corporations are people today. So we're just going to go into the office, issue an order. Hey, anyone that wants to talk about whether corporations are people, come on down and let's have a discussion, and we'll issue some ruling that's just kind of out there. The idea of the case and controversy requirement in Article 3 is to keep judges narrowly focused to only those cases that the lawyers and their clients, the litigants, bring to them. Courts are supposed to be very passive. This case of Citizens United, of which the second-year anniversary is tomorrow, began as a case involving a very narrow interpretation of the McCain-Feingold law, involving a thing called Hillary the movie, because back in 2008 they thought Hillary Clinton was going to be the nominee. So they created this movie that was essentially just a slander piece. And it was partially funded by corporate money, and thank you so much. Best of luck. I hope you speed. Hillary the movie ran afoul of the McCain-Feingold law. And so the group that was funding it, Citizens United, that's where the name comes from. It was this group that was taking some corporate money. They didn't like the fact that the McCain-Feingold law impinged upon their ability to put out this movie. So they sued. And that's the case that went to the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court had stayed to its Article 3 responsibilities, it would have simply said, we will interpret this McCain-Feingold provision dealing with whether they can show this movie during certain time periods of the campaign, and we'll just stop there. And the case was fully briefed, it had been argued, everything was done, it was ready to be decided on this very narrow question of how McCain-Feingold deals with this movie and when they can show it during the campaign. Instead, 5 out of 9 Supreme Court judges issued an almost unprecedented ruling. They said, we're not deciding this question. We want to decide a whole nother question, dealing with whether corporations are people, whether McCain-Feingold's unconstitutional, whether we should just sweep aside 100 years of established law, congressional enactments, prior court cases, state laws. That's what we want to decide, and you're going to go out there and you're going to brief it and bring it back to us in a month, and then we'll issue a decision. And that's what happened. And so when they issued the Citizens United decision, it was 5 out of 9, the barest majority. That was an impeachable offense, and the 5 of them should be thrown off the Supreme Court. And I'm glad that Occupy the Courts and Move to Amend has us here at the federal courthouse, because there are some federal judges in the building here, and I suspect if you got a couple of beers in them after work, they tell you exactly what I just told you. But they can't tell you that. They know Article 3 better than I do. They're Article 3 judges. There are federal judges in this building who understand just how radical and how unconstitutional those 5 judges acted. And that proves the point I started with, which is judges are politicians in robes. And we're not seeing any more glaring example than 5 radical extremists on the Supreme Court who don't care what the Constitution says, they don't care what the law has been, they're going to do what they're going to do, and the rest of us be damned. That's because they're corrupt politicians. Yep. Pardon me for disagreeing. He said they're rats. I say they're corrupt politicians. Okay. So that's what happened. That's why Citizens United is such a big deal, because 5 out of 9 violated their constitutional oath, issued this ruling that came out of nowhere because they decided one morning they wanted to declare this because they wanted to reshape our political system in their image for their political party, the Republican Party. And unless we get rid of the Citizens United decision, we're stuck with this ridiculousness for a long time. So you can find me on the internet at normangoldman.com. I have made the Move to Amend issue my primary issue because we've got to amend the Constitution to declare corporations are not people, money is not speech. We are the people, the Constitution is for us, and our voices shall not be drowned out by money. I love you all. I appreciate your passion. We are the real Americans. They are the fascists. Yes. They hate America. They don't understand what the Bill of Rights is all about. This is our country. This is our flag. And we've got to fight to defend it. We're up against a bunch of really nasty moneyed interests.
Code Pink also works in the presidential campaign of our current governor, Jerry Brown. So let's welcome Jody Evans.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for what you're doing. This is awesome. And go Move to Amend. So I wanted to cover a couple of things today. One, a little bit of the history about the campaign that I ran to get money out of politics, and then about the money that creates war, like how this would affect us not having to go to war, and then a little bit about activism. So I started raising money in politics back in 1972, and that's when the donors used to show up with bags of money. It would be in a briefcase. It was pretty amazing. And then we had Watergate, and the laws changed, and you could start to track where the money came from. And I've watched over this 38 years how Watergate and the fear and the understanding that created for us has been slowly eroded, like the frog in the water that the heat gets turned up and now we're all boiling to death. I mean, every year the politicians would get to make appointments to the oversight committee, so there's no oversight anymore, and then we, hear all this, let's, have campaign finance reform, but we make rules that would make it so there could be more money in politics. That was my favorite part. Campaign finance reform is always, how do you get more money into politics? And in 1991, I was so frustrated that I talk to Jerry Brown, who has been the state party chair and not having a great time, is that I have a great idea. Let's run a campaign about getting the money out of politics, because until we do, all these other things we fight for are doomed. Because the money in politics has more effect than we can even imagine. This was 20 years ago. So we ran a campaign. It was on a $100 limit. I don't know if anybody remembers, but you could only give $100, no corporate money. There were 8 people in the race, and at the end there were 2 people in the race. It was the money politician Clinton and Jerry Brown, who was really just the mouthpiece for a flat coalition across the country of people who got the power of money in politics, and that we needed to get it out. But the party money, the party machine, and all the money beat us. But what I want to say is that the people in that campaign have continued. Tim from PDA was one of my deputy campaign managers. They're across the country. When you look at who's continued to tell the story and fight and keep it out there, and who's even leading the many causes and organizations that are bringing this up, it goes back to then. And that's one of the things I want to say about activism. We have let the Coliseum game of party politics distract us from the real work. To live in a democracy, it's participatory democracy. It's not about how well do you buy a vote. And let me just say, the way Congress is the Walmart of influence. They are so crazy cheap. What these corporations get to do for how little money is a crime against humanity. I mean, when I was in the governor's office, I look at what people would try to buy $1 billion, amendment for that would save them $1 billion would be, a $10,000 donation to a congressperson or assembly person. I mean, it is crazy what we allow to happen, and that steals livelihoods, that steals our environment, that steals justice, and that creates the morass what we live in. And I remember when I finished running Jerry's campaign, I said, I am no longer a Democrat. I watched the process. I cannot be part of this system anymore, because Washington is a toxic waste dump, and it will eventually die. Unfortunately, it's a crazy toxic waste dump that tends to make everybody else crazy looking at it. If you look too closely, and if you get inside the Beltway, it will affect you. It is toxicity, on steroids. So we need to have our activism be about values, not people. We need to be educating each other and inspiring each other and telling the stories about the effect of the system that we live inside of that is broken. It's beyond broken. Not the facts, the stories. What are the stories in your life? What is the emotion you feel? What is the way you can talk to every person in your life so that they can experience the price of this? Because this turnaround is hard. It's always hard. Change is not easy. And we talk about it and pretend that it is, but it's not. First of all, what we are going after is potent and powerful and devious. And we have to remember that as we work our magic because it's not one person, one vote, it's one person, one voice. With our voices, don't forget it's not just your vote. That everything that has happened because of participation, of citizen participation, not how we voted. It has been how we as citizens have participated and moved those in power, not that we elected them into power and they did it. The system is broken. No matter who you elect, they go inside and it affects them. So we have to remember our own power. We have to stay connected to our own power and empower each other. Which brings me to there's a lot of things happening, a lot of initiatives, a lot of vibrant creativity around this issue. Let's not go after each other. Let's keep focusing on the goal. It's, creativity is good. Everybody gets attracted to something for some reason. We know that, in our relationship. Well, it's about relationship. It's how do we get inspired? How do we inspire others? Don't worry how many things are happening. Let them all happen. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. Because they need to bloom so that we can educate each other, so people can feel the price of this, so they can know what it is and be inspired by it. And we're watching it a little bit with the Republican campaign. We're watching that, it can turn around and bite you in the ass. And, I assume most of us are from California, and we know that we're pretty good at biting candidates in the ass when they think it's about money. So we're in California a little ahead of the game. People have tried it often here and failed. Just going back to a little bit of the historical context, this has been going on. Jerry Brown became Jerry Brown because he was Secretary of State, and he went after the lobbyists. He made them register. No more gifts were allowed. We need to get him into this conversation. He knows it's right. And then also I can't, from being inside of the machine, tell you what it looks like. The level of ease with which the greed can buy what it needs, how cheap it is, how easy it is, and that without this, we cannot stop it. It is it's a snowball going down a hill, and we need to stand in the way. And we need to do that together and united. We need to do it educated, so we thank you for putting together this day so that we can educate each other and inspire each other. But then let's take it out and figure out, how do we do it in our own communities? How do we find the stories that we tell? How do we make it part of an answer to a question that seems not connected, but that connects people to what they live inside of? That's very important. Now let's talk about war. The war profiteers are the 1% of the 1%. War.
Thank you. Real quickly, I want to bring up the Reverend to sing a song, just to give us all a little energy, because we've been going for a while right now.
But I didn't want to leave. Okay, you don't know that song. I want us to sing together. So, but first I want to say that after suing federal judges, I have been blacklisted in every area of my life, including at my church, as a minister and as a singer. So I thank you guys for allowing me to begin to sing again. We're going to sing a song that was made famous by the Civil Rights Movement. You all know it. We Shall Overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe. I can't hear you. We shall overcome one day. We shall be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Okay, let's walk hand in hand. So let's hold hands. We shall walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall not afraid.
We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we are not afraid today.
So I'm here. I'm going to start saying a few things, asking you to take a step forward or a step back based on whether or not that applies to you. So I might ask you to take a step forward if you're over 30, and you would step forward. But before we start, there's somebody else who would like to enter the race. We have here our private corporation. Corporation, can you introduce yourself? Are you a particular corporation? Coke Industries is really concerned about about the Occupy movement and how much free speech they've been having, and they're really interested in persuading me to crack down on the Occupy movement. But it's a great time for elected officials want to hear their voice. We try to invite them to participate in this public discussion. So we'll see who gets to speak first. So step forward if you are able to speak in written form. If you can write things and get them out in these form. Take a step forward if you have always had a right to vote in the country. If you have always had the right to vote in the country. No matter what, no matter say your gender. Say your gender or status of person is never affected. I will remind you that you have not always had the right to vote in this country. You've not always been considered a voter. Take a step forward if you can choose where you are born in this country. The corporation probably is the only one. Remind you that corporations have the ability to choose where they were born and hence choose some of the laws that apply to them as they navigate the political process. They can choose what it is. Take a step forward. Take a step forward if you have time to attend a city council meeting in the evening. Take a step forward if you can pay multiple representatives to also attend that city council meeting for you. You guys got some money here.
Yeah.
You're a corporation too? He's a 1%er. All right. Take a step forward if you could live forever. Take a step forward if you could be in multiple places at a single time.
Yeah.
Take a step forward if the Bill of Rights applies to you. Okay, the citizens finally got some more motions forward back there. Take a step forward if you feel comfortable speaking at all public forums. All right, we're getting pretty close. How you doing? All right. Take a step forward if class has never been, in a matter of class, how much your family earns has never prevented your education in this country, the level of education you receive. We've had some people who are privileged. She was able to step forward. She knows. Step forward if you have money to take me out to dinner. We're getting really close here.
Or step forward if you can give unlimited amounts of money.
All right, step forward if you really can just give me unlimited amounts of money in my next campaign.
Yes.
All right, how you doing?
Lifting people's voices loud and clear. I remember going to meetings in the past, my past 8 years as an activist, and many of the people with the best ideas would feel self-conscious about trying to stand at a microphone and impose their views on anyone else. What I really love is Occupy has taught us all that it is one person, one voice. That's how democracy works, and that's why corporate personhood is such a fatal lie for our country. So I want to talk about that. First of all, some good news. The California Disclosure Act, which is a bill in the Assembly. I'm going to talk about the process as it is. And I understand, Pete, your sickness at watching this kind of cancer grow in the body politic. And sometimes I feel like a doctor who's trying that last intervention against cancer that you hear somebody's taking their fourth treatment, and they're still trying, and sometimes there are miracles. But I want the body politic to live, and so I'm going to use the methods that we know so far to deliver new treatments that we hope will keep the body politic alive long enough for the real transformation. Perhaps it's a reproduction of a new body politic to take place. So the California Disclose Act in that assembly, so corrupted by money, which is why I haven't run for anything yet, has been passed out of Elections Committee unanimously 5-0, and just this week out of Appropriations Committee on a party line vote. All the Democrats voted to have the super PACs identify themselves, the top 3 funders with name and corporate logo or individual name, instead of being, the Citizens for Educated Children Committee. So that's big. All the Democrats passed it out of appropriations, and all the Republicans on that committee voted against it. In other words, to preserve secrecy so that whatever corporate money goes into these phony PACs and their phony ads for the betterment of mankind can be revealed to be what they are. Yeah, okay, political speech. And not free, by the way. It costs millions of dollars, and that's why the Supreme Court was so stupid and flawed in granting corporate personhood, because money equals free speech. What is it about free? We don't understand. All right. I noted on National Public Radio, which I invoke only because it is the Commons. It's the closest we have to a Commons. It's supposed to be public radio because it is not supported ostensibly by advertising, although corporate foundations sponsor it to the degree that they favor such corporations and their issues in editorial coverage. Be that as it may, I track the way they present issues because it shows you the extent to which fatal flaws are normalized in our discourse. And this week, when they described SOPA and PIPA, the 2 bills making their way through our Senate and Congress to fight online piracy by granting the capacity to corporations to censor what they find contrary to their interests. Sometimes it's criminal piracy, yeah, and even I and others' intellectual property is not being properly compensated. But I don't want to trade that away for political censorship, because I've experienced that as an activist too. And my life as an American is of far greater import to my future, my children's future, and our collective future than the loss of some intellectual property money via somebody's downloading on the internet I've still made money when I've made something, and I expect for the DVDs my union to arrange compensation and my agent, but I don't expect the internet to be censored for my personal gain. And that's something we have to be very clear on in each of our lives. Corporate personhood allows these aggregates, these economic aggregates for which we work, to say it is our corporate survival as persons that you depend on. Therefore, we must have our political interests attended to beyond your individual or even your collective interests as Americans or human beings. That equation is wrong, and the Supreme Court lives in shame for having entitled it. Anyway, on National Public Radio, they talked about how the soap-a-pippa argument pitted Silicon Valley against Hollywood. As if. I mean, there are people in Silicon Valley and in Hollywood that never even knew originally that this legislation was being written. And by the way, lobbying is what we hear. Oh, the corporations are lobbying for it. They're lobbying for votes. They're not just lobbying for votes, people. They wrote the legislation and took it to Washington and said, we want this. Congress has to do it. They write the legislation. Nobody else even knows it's there. Then we're all supposed to lobby pro or con. Well, by God, they got the jump. Okay. Those are just a few of the things I wanted to say, and I will lastly say, remember, every time we talk about corporate money out of politics, the radio and television that we watch, and even to some degree the internet sites that we love, that do survive on some kind of advertising, it's usually small advertising, but remember, only because it has to enter the conversation. The media is challenged. My salary as an actress, the movies you watch, so much of it is dependent on the money that enters the media stations, the little affiliates in Toledo, the weatherman. Her salary all depends on Christmas every 4 years, which is a presidential campaign pouring money into the media and the networks. Again, this is a case where the interests of our country, which must survive, supersede the interests of the media to make this money from these super PACs, from these false dichotomies, as Peter called it, from all the falsehoods that are generated in order for, I would think, democracy to end and the interests of the few to survive. So we need to know that, and we need to rethink how media, entertainment, advertising, proper compensation. I'm willing to engage that, but I am not willing to build any of this discourse any further on the fatal flaw of making persons out of corporations from a Supreme Court that's so right-wing that they think only God should create life. So what the hell were they doing creating corporate personhood? Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi.
The billionaires are here. We're men of the hour. We're sitting pretty chilling in our halls of power. We're buying access. We're seeing progress and making a mess of the political process. Oh, yes. Our cheese is buying us a whole lot of leverage. When we arrive, they serve us a nice, cool beverage. We're the final word on impending legislation. Please no player hating on the regulating of our corporations and our industries. We're the foxes with the platinum set of keys, buying $1 million favors for a couple of G's. We got money currency steady flowing in the breeze. We're squeezing and we're causing pain. We're waging class warfare just like Tamerlane. The billionaires are living our American dream. We're spilling all your milk and we're drinking all your cream. Step out, I stretch hummus and everybody stares. Parents, lock up your daughters. Here come the billionaires. We are the kings of Capitol Hill, so just chill. We had a hand in drafting the tax cut bill. Investment company pockets must be lined, so the bank bailout was made with us in mind. The Congress is making us feel all cozy and warm when they vote to repeal every kind of reform reform. We say this is our Congress. You know we ain't kidding. They're taking our money and doing our bidding. We got the USA by the curly short hairs. Kids, look out below. Here come the billionaires. Koch Industries are in the house. Chamber of Commerce is in the house. Freedom Works is in the house. Who else is in there? Oh, yeah, Fox News Corps is in the house. You know, each administration's preoccupation is directing the nation of wealth consolidation. All those taxes that you pay, they'll be coming our way on a platinum tray, so don't play. No one can stop us. No one dares. Run for the hills. Here come the billionaires. Run for the hills. Here come the billionaires. Here come the billionaires. Thank you. Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. You know, I want to say something to you. You know, we are the tiniest minority in America. The most beleaguered. We're less than 1/10 of 1%. And the only way that we can keep from being stampeded by the 99-some-odd% of the rest of you is to aggregate all of our aspirations and dreams in the form of large corporate multinational companies. It's the only thing we can do. We're so vulnerable. You know, and so we were so grateful when our Supreme Court finally recognized that that corporations have rights, human rights, just like their flesh and blood brethren. And anybody who says that's not true, let's think of the things we have in common. Corporate citizens and flesh and blood citizens. We want to make friends. You want to make friends, right? Friendship is a really important thing, right? That's why we cultivate endearing relationships with elected officials. It's about friendship. It's a moving thing. And the other thing is that if you were to if you amended the Constitution to rob corporate citizens of their human rights that we've so hard fought to attain, you see what would happen is the money that we spend, our free speech, would suddenly be denied us, and we would no longer have the ability to use our money to manipulate people into voting for an agenda that is not in their best interest. We can't have that. We have to stop it right here in the bud, because otherwise we're going to slide backwards into a dark time when one person, one vote was the law of the land, and we urge you not to do that. It happens, I don't know if you know this, but Clarence Thomas is actually a poet. He doesn't say a lot during the hearings, but he wrote a poem, and I'm going to recite it for you, about his jurisprudence, his philosophy. Back in 1886, in the Santa Clara case, corporations were perceived to join the human race. A humble little clerk in a tiny little case, he stated that they were persons, and it's what we love to quote, we're Scalia, Alito, Roberts, Kennedy, and Thomas. We all share a point of view. And we strive to do the job that they appointed us to do. When we render our opinions on some complex legal fights, we decide for corporations and extend their human rights. A corporation's just like any person you know, because it likes to strive and it needs to grow. Like a human being, it only wants to succeed, and when it takes a hit, it can truly bleed. If there's a major jolt in our economy, it can fail, and that is proof of its humanity. Because corporations are people too. They share a culture and a point of view. They have their needs and they demand their due. Yes, corporations are people too. A corporation's hungry for the latest trends, and like a human being, it just wants to make friends. And befriending politicians is a noble aim. We can't vote, but we can buy them, which is almost the same. If a corporation's bloated and it can't deny it, it can downsize its workers, which is just like a diet. Corporations are people too. Doing everything we need to do and keeping up a tally of the folks we screw. Yes, corporations are like any movie star who drives around in a fancy car with a jacuzzi in the back and a stock-wet bar and gets his way and won't say no, take no, and every day makes tons of dough. We're people too. Thank you very much. That was by Clarence Thomas, and I wanted to share with you. One last thing I want to say. A lot of people in the 99% decry the notion that money is traveling upward toward us. They feel that this is unfair, and I want to leave you with a metaphor. If you give a small child a very sharp knife, they're likely to lop off a couple fingers, but if you give that knife to a master chef, that chef is going to use that knife to craft a sumptuous feast. It's the same thing with money. If we give all of you folks money, you're going to squander it on medical bills and maybe buy yourself a charcoal grill or something. Silly, but we'll take that money and we'll destabilize democratic regimes and develop new weapon systems, and we'll wage wars in countries that just happen to be built over a lot of petrochemicals, and we'll turn that money into more money, because we have money flowing in our veins like ichor flowed in the veins of the Greek gods, and that's where the money belongs, in our hands, because we know what to do with it. Anyway, we're the Billionaires, thebillionaires.org. You can download all our music for free so it can manipulate your brain and you can start thinking like we do and voting for our best interest. Thank you very much. We're very delighted to be here. And we'll be tomorrow, we're going to be marching in the Funeral for Democracy in Westwood. I wonder who's coming out for that. Anybody? Come out to that. We've got a Dixieland band, and we'll be singing. All right, thank you so much. I'm Felonious Acts of the Billionaires. Thank you.
Felonious Acts, everybody. Completely disagree with everything you just said.
We are not afraid. We are not afraid.
Because there are a lot of people who were middle class until 2008, and then they got kicked out of their homes, and now they're poor and they're on the street, and they know what everybody else has been going through for 30 years.
Who here truly believes in justice? How about equality? Is that a good thing? How about freedom? Is that a good thing? Okay. Well, because of cases like Citizens United, because corporate America is able to go out and steal homes, your liberties are in jeopardy. And every day we wait, every day we do nothing, we continue to allow the tyranny of greed to control our government. And today we are here to give you a little bit of education how you can fight back against corporate America. And that document that is being passed out now is one of the examples, because the greatest weapon we have is the truth. So what you've got there, and I'm going to talk about it briefly, and then we're going to talk about the foreclosure issue more generally. That particular document, it's an actual recorded instrument. It's an assignment of a deed of trust and note that has some very interesting characteristics. First and foremost, it is evidence of a felony. In the state of California, it is illegal to record a false instrument. Now, I'm a recovering banker. I was a banker for 27 years. And I've actually signed documents like that. The difference is when I sign them, I actually had the authority to do so. There's only one problem. Home 123 Corporation went out of business in October 2007. This document has been relied on to illegally foreclose on the homes of two people in their 70s who were victims of hard sell tactics and were put into a series of mortgage loans every 18 months from which they received no money. Today, I'm a legal aid attorney, so I'm going to be engaged in litigations to try to reverse that sale and save this home that these people have lived in for over 50 years.
In cases where they determine it's financially better for them to foreclose right away, that's what they do.
Well, it's glad to be here today, and there's so much we can talk about foreclosures. But one of the things that we all can understand is that this has affected every family across America. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter whether you're Democrat, Republican, black, white, Hispanic. It has affected everyone. There's people that have done absolutely nothing wrong, yet they have become victims of what the banks created. There's people that are underwater. There's people that are over water. You name it, they have become victims. I myself I'm a victim of foreclosure. I lost my home even though that I had over $300,000 of equity. I did nothing wrong. And this is the very reality of the conversation, is that it can affect anyone. During the occupation, as we got involved with Occupy LA, I talked to many of the police officers, and many of them, they were facing foreclosures. I talked to one of the chiefs of the fire departments that came to inspect the encampment, and he told me off the record that he was having problems with his mortgage. The Occupy LA right now, we're in the process of helping a 79-year-old woman that is losing her home of over 50 years. We're also helping a woman in Van Nuys, California. She's a chaplain for one of the hospitals here in Southern California, and she did also nothing wrong. She was 1 month behind, and she was evicted from her home. So these are the realities that we're living in. We know that it affects our children. Children are so disconnected right now because they feel so depressed and oppressed and confused and troubled. We know what it has done to marriages. Marriages are at the brink of just falling apart because of the foreclosure crisis. We know that the courts are so overwhelmed with cases that we know that what has happened in the court system, that the court system themselves have become the robo-signers for the banks. They literally are authorizing all these foreclosures to take place even without looking at the proper documentation. The courtrooms across America are so filled up that the crimes that they have committed are so massive, they don't have the time and the means to deal with this crisis. So hopefully that now that we are beginning to talk about the issue, we could gather together in numbers and pressure these elected officials to stop taking money from the corporations and start representing the people. That's what we want. That is justice.
We are not afraid. We are not afraid.
We have some chalk crime. We're stepping in the street. It says people before profit. Courts are corrupt. When did we decide to believe we hear and not what we see? When did we decide what we hear and not what we see? Oh, this is just totally illegal. This is illegal. This is all this chalk crime. This is chalk crime. I know, it's ridiculous, right? This is federal, right? Whose money paid for this? And then they're pointing at the courthouse and see how humongous these buildings are. It's ridiculous. This young lady looks like she's drawing $100 bills. Yeah, 100. $100 bill. She has her face covered up so she won't be tagged as a criminal.